Let's take a trip across the United States. Our journey begins on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean and continues across a low coastal plain. After crossing the gently rolling Piedmont, we climb into the Appalachian Mountains. Leaving the Appalachians behind, we cross the Mississippi River and travel across the fertile Midwest lowlands and onto the Great Plains. Then, we see the high peaks of the Rocky Mountains rising above the plains. Magnificent scenery surrounds us as we travel through the mountains. Next, we follow the Snake River as it winds through a dry plateau en route to the Columbia River and the volcanic Cascade Mountains. We continue through a dramatic gorge carved into the Cascades by the Columbia River and reach the fertile lands of Oregon's Willamette Valley. From there, it's only a short distance across low coastal mountains to the shores of the Pacific Ocean. We have traveled more than 4,500 kilometers across the world's fourth largest country. To the north of our route lies Canada, the world's second largest country, exceeded in size only by Russia. Together, the United States and Canada occupy more than 7 million square miles of the North American continent. The United States has 50 political subdivisions that are called states. Canada is divided into provinces and territories. States, provinces, and territories are regions that are defined politically. Regions can be defined and mapped in many ways using different criteria. Climatic regions range from tropical to polar, but most parts of the United States and Canada are in the mid-latitudes of the Northern Hemisphere and have mid-latitude climates. Mid-latitude climates have a distinct change of seasons. Winters are mild in the south and become increasingly longer and colder toward the north. Vegetation regions are similar to climatic regions because natural vegetation varies with temperature and precipitation. The natural vegetation regions of the United States and Canada can be grouped into four broad categories. Forests are found where there is enough moisture for tree growth. Grasslands are common in drier regions. Desert vegetation with barren ground between plants is found in areas that have very little precipitation. Tundra, a type of low vegetation, is found at higher elevations in the mountains and above the tree line in Arctic regions. Each of these vegetation regions provides habitat for different types of wild animals. Most of North America's natural vegetation has been replaced by pastures, agricultural croplands, and urban development. Much of the natural vegetation and the wildlife that we can see today has been preserved in national parks. Landforms include nearly level plains, rolling hills, canyon-cut plateaus, and high mountains. Plains are usually low in elevation and have low relief. Elevation is the height of a land surface above sea level, and relief is the distance between the highest and lowest points in a landscape. A landscape with low relief is very flat to gently rolling, like you can see here in the Mississippi Valley. A landscape with high relief, such as this mountain landscape in Montana, has a lot of vertical distance between its highest and lowest points. Plateau surfaces may be as flat as plains, but plateaus are usually higher in elevation than plains. In some places, deep canyons may be cut into a plateau's surface. Hills have a moderate relief, with a distinct difference between the elevation of valleys and summits. Mountain landscapes have high relief, and the mountainside and peaks are often jagged with exposed rock faces. The United States and Canada have 8 main landform regions. Let's look at each of these regions. Low, flat coastal plains are found along the shores of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. Forests are the natural vegetation in these humid, low-lying lands. Today, much of this region is used to grow commercial crops. Toward the northeast, the waters of the Atlantic Ocean have become higher relative to the surface of the land. This has submerged or drowned the river mouths. These drowned river mouths are called estuaries. Chesapeake Bay is an example of a very large estuary. Estuaries are often excellent harbors for ships. Port cities such as New York and Boston were built on estuaries along America's east coast. Today, a line of large cities stretches along the Atlantic coastal plain from Boston, Massachusetts to Richmond, Virginia. You can hardly tell where one densely populated urban area ends and another begins. A pattern of urban development like this is called a megalopolis. The United States capital, Washington, D.C., is part of this East Coast megalopolis. South of Richmond, the Atlantic coastal plain becomes increasingly rural. There are more farms and fewer cities. Even further south, the Florida Peninsula extends more than 500 kilometers between the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. The peninsula is rimmed with many beautiful sandy beaches, and its low-lying southern tip is a wonderland of swamp and marsh known as the Everglades. West of Florida, the Gulf coastal plains spread along the Gulf of Mexico. These plains are very wide. They extend inland up the Mississippi River as far north as southeast Missouri, where the Mississippi is joined by the Ohio River. The soils along the rivers that run through these plains are very fertile because they were formed from materials such as clay, silt, and sand that were deposited by river floods. Such water-deposited soils are called alluvial soils. Many different kinds of crops can be grown on these rich soils. The great rivers that created the alluvial plains also provide routes of transportation important for moving agricultural produce and other resources to market. The Appalachian Mountain System lies to the west of the Atlantic coastal plains. The Appalachians are made up of many mountain ranges and plateaus that extend almost 2,400 kilometers from eastern Canada to western Alabama. The Ozark Highlands are also part of the Appalachian system. All of these eastern mountains are very old and have been heavily eroded. Only a few summits, such as Mount Washington in New Hampshire, are more than 1,800 meters high. From New Jersey through Georgia, the Appalachians are bordered on the east by a gently rolling plateau that is called the Piedmont Plateau. Rivers form falls and rapids where they drop from the Piedmont onto the coastal plain. This is called the fall line. The falls prevent ocean-going ships from going further up the rivers, so early settlements were built along the fall line near harbors where ships could be unloaded. The easternmost ridges of the Appalachians rise steeply from the western edge of the Piedmont. These mountains were created long ago from the pressure of the North American and African continents colliding and pushing the rocks into folds. The Appalachian Plateaus lie to the west of the Appalachian Mountains. The rocks that make up the Appalachian Plateaus were uplifted without folding, so their rock layers, or strata, lie in nearly horizontal positions. The hills and valleys in this area were created by the erosive force of streams flowing across the elevated landscape. The Appalachian Plateaus are rich in coal and other mineral resources. The Ozark and Ouachita uplands are a complex geographic landscape of hills and low mountains in Missouri, Arkansas, and eastern Oklahoma. The Ozark Mountains are famous for their many springs and clear streams. The next landform region we'll look at is the Canadian Shield, which wraps around the Hudson Bay. The area is dotted with hundreds of lakes. Extremely old rocks lie under a cover of very thin soil. Forests are found in the southern part of the region, but the poor soils and cold climate make growing crops difficult. Further north, the winters are long and extremely cold. The trees become smaller and smaller until they finally disappear at the Arctic tree line. There are not many ways to make a living, so settlements are few and widely spaced. North America's central core is made up of a huge area of low relief. Most parts of these interior plains are drained by the Mississippi River and its tributaries. The largest tributaries of the Mississippi are the Missouri River, which brings water from the west, and the Ohio River, which flows into the Mississippi from the east. The Great Lakes bound the central lowlands on the northeast, where they form the border between the United States and Canada. The lakes are joined by waterways, including the Niagara River that flows between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. At Niagara Falls, the river cascades over a ledge of hard rocks on its course between lakes. The eastern parts of the central lowlands receive plenty of precipitation throughout the year. Here, forests are the natural vegetation, although much of the land has now been cleared for crop production. Westward, the climate is drier. There is only enough moisture for trees to grow along streams and rivers. Before farmers settled in the region, tall grasses and wildflowers covered the rest of the landscape. Grasslands like this are called prairies. Prairie soils are very fertile, so most of the prairie grasses were plowed under long ago. Now, the land is used to grow corn, wheat, and other crops. This region is sometimes called the North American breadbasket because of the many crops grown here. North America's interior plains extend westward to become the Great Plains. The climate becomes increasingly drier toward the west, so the tall prairie grasses gradually give way to short grasses. The plains also increase in elevation toward the west, rising from about 600 meters to an elevation of about 1,500 meters at the base of the Rocky Mountains. This rise in elevation occurs very gradually, so the Great Plains are generally low in relief. In some places, however, steep escarpments mark a transition to higher ground. Commercial crops are grown on large farms in the eastern part of the Great Plains. Further west, where it's drier, much of the land is used for grazing cattle and other livestock. A great belt of mountain ranges cuts across the North American continent from Alaska to New Mexico. The easternmost Rocky Mountain ranges rise up abruptly from the Great Plains to heights of 3,000 to 4,200 meters. The tree-covered slopes of these mountains contrast with the grass-covered plains below because precipitation is greater and temperatures cooler at higher elevations. The Rockies separate the rivers that flow west toward the Pacific Ocean from the rivers that flow east into the Gulf of Mexico. The ridges from which waters flow toward the different seas are called the Continental Divide. The Wyoming Basin, with its fascinating Yellowstone National Park, lies between the northern and central Rockies. Here, hot springs and geysers are powered by hot molten rock that lies near the Earth's surface. The Rocky Mountains were uplifted during a mountain-building period that began about 100 million years ago. Even as movements of plates under the Earth's crust were uplifting the Rockies, the forces of erosion were shaping them. Streams carved the mountain landscapes, cutting out deep V-shaped canyons and carrying rock materials toward the lowlands. Glaciers, many of which have now melted, gave the northern Rockies a rugged shape. This type of glacier-carved landscape is called an alpine landscape. Beautiful scenery like this makes the Rocky Mountain region a popular destination for tourists. The Rocky Mountains also have rich mineral deposits, and many mountain settlements first developed as mining towns. A vast, sparsely populated region lies between the Rocky Mountains and the mountain ranges that parallel the Pacific coast. The natural vegetation ranges from desert in the south to grasslands and drought-tolerant forests in the north. The region's most spectacular scenery is found on the Colorado Plateau. Here, the Colorado River and its tributaries have cut deep canyons into the plateau's surface. At northern Arizona's Grand Canyon, the river's cutting action has revealed layer upon layer of rock strata that form a visual history of the region's geology. North America's desert landscapes are found to the south and west of the Colorado Plateau. Desert plants such as the giant saguaro cactus of Arizona are adapted to living for long periods of time without any rain. Much of the North American desert has interior drainage. Interior drainage means that runoff of water from the rain and snow that falls in the mountains collects on basin floors at the foot of the mountains. It forms salty lakes such as Utah's Great Salt Lake, or it evaporates to leave mineral deposits called salt flats. Death Valley, a basin in California's Mojave Desert, is the hottest and lowest place in North America. At Badwater in Death Valley, the salt flats lie 86 meters below sea level. In these dry lands, farming is only possible where water is available for irrigation. The northern part of the basins, ranges, and plateau region is covered with vast plateaus made up of lava flows. In places, the accumulated flows are more than a mile deep. The climate is not as dry in this area as it is further south, and, because it's cooler, the rates of evaporation are lower. The greater amount of moisture makes the land productive, although irrigation is still important for good crop yields. The continent's Pacific coastlands have landscapes of remarkable variety. The eastern border of this region is made up of high mountain chains. Toward the south, the east-facing slopes of California's Sierra Nevada mountains rise abruptly from desert basins. North of the Sierra Nevadas rise the conical volcanic peaks of the Cascade Mountain Range. From California through Washington State, lower mountains lie just inland from the Pacific coast. Fertile valleys, such as California's Central Valley and Oregon's Willamette Valley, lie between the coastal mountains and the higher mountain ranges further inland. In the state of Washington, the waters of Puget Sound fill a large depression between the coastal Olympic Mountains and the North Cascades. Mountains that have been heavily carved by glaciers continue up the coast of mainland British Columbia and into Alaska. Much of this coastal region's population is concentrated where large cities such as San Francisco, California, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia have grown up where Pacific ports were established in the 19th century. The United States and Canada cover much of the North American continent. North America has a dramatic variety of natural landscapes, ranging from ocean shores and rugged mountains to grass-covered plains and desert basins. In addition to great natural beauty, the region is rich in natural resources that have been developed into an amazing array of commercial industries. There is farmland capable of growing crops that can feed not only the population of the United States and Canada, but much of the rest of the world. All in all, North America is one of the most interesting and vital regions of the world.